My name is Lydia Collins, and the moment my marriage began to fall apart did not come during a fight or a shocking confession. It happened in the middle of a real estate showing, while my husband and I stood inside a bright, modern condo owned by a German expat. I acted as if I did not understand a single word being said. Then I heard one sentence that tore my world in two. For 15 years, I had been the quiet wife, the agreeable one, the woman who kept her head down, kept the home running, and tried not to upset the balance. Ethan, my husband, preferred it that way. He had a powerful job, a commanding voice, and an unshakable belief that he naturally knew best about everything. I worked a modest accounting job at a small firm and had learned to tuck my thoughts away before they ever reached my lips. As time passed, I hardly recognized myself. I moved through life carefully, dodging his irritation the way someone avoids sharp corners in the dark. I learned to shrink myself in every conversation, every choice, every space. But that morning, riding the elevator to the 12th floor of that sleek building, something inside me shifted. It was subtle, like a soft tapping in my chest, reminding me that the life I was living was not the only one available to me. I did not realize it then, but I was about to hear the truth that would force me to confront everything I had ignored, the truth that would push me toward the woman I had nearly forgotten I could be. For most people, home is the place where they finally exhale. For me, home became where I held my breath. Ethan filled every corner of our life with his opinions, his habits, and his decisions. At first, I mistook it for confidence. Over time, I saw it for what it was: control disguised as certainty. He planned our vacations, managed our spending, and dictated our weekends. If I suggested something different, he brushed it off with a wave of his hand or a weary sigh, as if my ideas were minor annoyances instead of real thoughts. When I once mentioned taking a floral design class after work, he laughed so fast and so loudly that I felt foolish for bringing it up at all. He called it a waste of money and said I would quit within a month. After that, I stopped talking about hobbies. Work offered little relief. My accounting job covered the basics, and Ethan made sure I never forgot that his income was the foundation of our household. During arguments, he reminded me that he paid for the mortgage, the car, the upgrades, the vacations. Each reminder carried a sharp edge, as if my contributions only mattered when he chose to acknowledge them. Even our evenings followed the same routine. He settled into the living room with the television blaring, while I moved quietly through the apartment, cooking, cleaning, and trying not to disturb him. The quieter I became, the easier life felt for him, and the heavier it became for me. Looking back, I see how gradual the change was. It was not one argument or one cruel remark. It was the constant erosion of being unheard, the slow disappearance of my voice inside a marriage that had once been filled with laughter.
Still, I stayed.
I stayed because I believed patience might restore what we had lost. I stayed because I thought love meant trying harder. I stayed because I believed I was the problem. My turning point did not arrive with fireworks. It came quietly, the way most life changes do, disguised as simple curiosity on an ordinary night. I was scrolling through my phone after cleaning the kitchen when an ad appeared for a free online German course. I almost scrolled past it, but something made me stop. Maybe it was the idea of doing something new, something that belonged only to me. I clicked. That small choice became the first doorway out of the life I felt stuck in. At first, I studied for just 15 minutes a night, whispering simple words while Ethan watched sports in the living room. I kept the bedroom door nearly closed, letting the television drown out the soft sounds of my lessons. It felt thrilling in a way I had not felt in years. My mind woke up. My thoughts stretched. I was learning something not for work and not for Ethan, but for myself. 15 minutes became 30, then an hour. Soon I had a notebook filled with vocabulary and grammar charts, carefully hidden beneath a stack of blankets. My progress surprised me. I understood short videos without subtitles. I could read basic articles. The app even praised my pronunciation, and each time it did, I felt a spark inside me grow. But I never told Ethan. Not because I planned to hide it forever, but because just imagining his reaction made my chest tighten. I could already hear his voice calling it pointless, silly, unnecessary. He would ask why I was learning a language that had nothing to do with my job or our life. And beneath his words, I knew I would hear the message he always delivered. You are not capable, and you will never finish anything. You are wasting time. So I kept it secret. That small pocket of solitude became the only place where I did not feel judged. It was mine, untouched by his opinions, my quiet rebellion, my hidden freedom. I did not realize then that this secret would one day become the very thing that saved me. The next morning, Ethan walked into the bedroom, holding his phone like he had found treasure. He told me about a condo listed by a German man named Hans Ritter. According to him, it was the best option we had seen in months. He did not ask what I thought. He simply declared that we would see it the next day. I nodded as expected. When we arrived, the building felt polished and new. The lobby smelled of fresh coffee and clean air. Ethan looked around with pride, as if he had built the place himself. I followed silently, clutching my purse, reminding myself of the plan. Say nothing, pretend I didn't understand a word of German, and watch him speak freely when he thought I could not understand. Hans opened the door with a warm smile. Tall, calm, and easy to like, he made the room feel lighter. As I anticipated, Ethan immediately switched to German. I stayed close to the wall, keeping my face neutral, listening as Hans welcomed us in and apologized for what he called a small mess. Though the apartment looked spotless, I listened carefully. Ethan translated bits of the conversation into English, but his versions were flat and incomplete. When Hans mentioned excellent building management, Ethan said it was only average. When Hans described neighbors as professors and doctors, Ethan shrugged, calling them ordinary people. He even added details Hans never mentioned. Subtle at first, it became obvious. Ethan was controlling the story, shaping the condo to fit his narrative. And yet, the condo was beautiful. Bright windows, smooth wooden floors, a kitchen that felt like a dream. I whispered that I liked it, and Ethan brushed it off with a quick nod, returning to his conversation with Hans. As they moved room to room, discussing details, I stayed quiet, staring at the life I thought we might have here. But beneath admiration, something deeper was stirring. The more I listened, the clearer it became that this viewing was not just about real estate. It was the start of a truth I could no longer ignore. We eventually returned to the living room, where Hans offered coffee. Ethan accepted before I could answer, treating my preference as an afterthought. I sat on the edge of the sofa, hands folded tightly in my lap, heart pounding in my throat. Hans spoke warmly about his years in the condo, about returning to Germany to be with his family, and about wanting someone who would care for the place. Ethan translated none of it. His summaries were short, stripping away anything that might make Hans seem sincere or human. Then the conversation turned to paperwork, and I heard Ethan's voice sharpen. Hans explained a common practice. Sometimes properties are registered under one spouse initially to simplify administrative work. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. Then he asked Ethan directly if he wanted to consider that option.
What happened next shattered me.
Ethan leaned back, lowered his voice, and said in German, "She does not need to know. She does not understand anything anyway. I am the one paying. I am the one deciding. It is none of her concern." I froze. My hands went cold. My cup trembled. Every word cut into me. None of her concern. Not my home. Not my future. Not my life. I stared at the floor as Ethan continued talking with casual confidence, unaware that the woman sitting inches away felt her entire marriage unraveling thread by thread. In that moment, something inside me shifted. It was not anger at first. It was grief. The kind that hits when you realize someone you trusted never truly saw you as an equal. For years, I had been shrinking myself, believing my voice needed more patience, more kindness, more effort. But now I saw the truth. My voice had never mattered to him at all. And once you hear something like that, you cannot go back to pretending you did not. The drive home was eerily quiet. Ethan hummed along to a pop song, tapping the steering wheel as if everything had gone according to plan. I stared out the window, replaying his words over and over until the knot in my chest grew so tight I could hardly breathe. When we walked through the front door, he went straight to the sofa. The television clicked on, filling the room with noise and chatter. I stood in the hallway for a moment, gripping my purse strap. Normally, I would have waited for a calmer moment, building courage over hours or days. But something inside me refused silence this time. I stepped into the living room. Ethan didn't look away from the screen.
"We need to talk," I said.
He sighed loudly, as if my voice were an interruption rather than a request. "Can it wait, Lydia?" I just sat down.
"No."
"Not this time." He glanced at me, eyebrows drawn together. He wasn't used to hearing firmness in my tone. It unsettled him. I asked him directly whose name he planned to put on the deed. He blinked, confused, then quickly said, casually, that of course it would be both of ours. I wondered for a moment if he even believed his own words. I told him exactly what I had heard, every word in German. The color drained from his face. He stood up slowly, as if unsure how to arrange himself. "You understand German," he muttered. "Since when?" "The question doesn't matter," I said. "The betrayal does." I confronted him, voicing the words I had swallowed for years. He defended himself with the same old arguments. He provided for us, he handled things better, he knew how the world worked, I was overreacting. He paced the room, raised his voice, shifted blame back to me. Anything to avoid facing the truth. But for the first time in our marriage, his words did not sink into me. They hit a wall because I finally had won. When I said I no longer trusted him, something in his expression fractured. He looked at me as if my defiance was the one betrayal he couldn't accept. But it was too late. He had already betrayed us both. For a long moment after our argument, the apartment was painfully still. Ethan stood near the window, hands on his hips, breathing hard, as if he were the one wronged. I sat on the edge of a dining chair, feeling the last threads of our marriage slip quietly through my fingers. Finally, he turned toward me. "So what now, Lydia? You want to punish me for something you misunderstood?" I shook my head. I understood perfectly. "You plan to take control of everything and leave me with nothing." He scoffed, pacing again. "You always think the worst." I was simplifying the process. That's all. Then we would fix it later. But he had no explanation for why he told a stranger that it was none of my business. No explanation for why he spoke about me like I was a child, not a partner. I said calmly, "I cannot continue living like this."
His face tightened.
"Are you threatening me with divorce?" he asked. For the first time, I answered without fear. "I am telling you I cannot stay in a marriage where my voice means nothing." The words landed like a stone in the room. Ethan looked startled, almost offended, as if I no longer fit the role he had written for me. He grabbed his keys, muttering about needing space to think. He said he would stay at his friend Jamal's for a few days, speaking with the confidence of a man who expected me to come to my senses while he was gone. He left without closing the door gently. It slammed behind him. When the sound faded, the silence that followed felt different. It no longer felt heavy, it felt honest. I walked to the bedroom, sat on the floor, and let myself finally cry. Not because I wanted him back. Not because I regretted speaking up. I cried for the years I had lost, for the parts of myself I abandoned, and for the version of me I had almost forgotten. But beneath the grief, something else quietly grew. Relief and the first stirrings of courage. The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes and a mind that refused to stay still. Ethan hadn't come home, and for once, I didn't wonder where he was or what he was doing. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, my phone in hand, and a weighty decision pressing on me. I needed to call Hans. My fingers trembled as I dialed his number. Part of me worried he would think I was foolish or dramatic. But when he answered, his voice was warm and steady, the same calm tone he had used the day before. "This is Lydia Collins," I said. "We viewed your condo yesterday." A pause followed. Then he said gently, "You speak German." "Yes," I admitted quietly. "I heard everything. Every word." He let out a slow breath. "I thought so. You were very quiet."
"Too quiet."
I suspected you understood more than your husband realized. I apologized for the awkwardness and told him we wouldn't be buying the condo. Before I could finish, he stopped me. Lydia, please don't apologize. Yesterday reminded me of something I went through with my own daughter. She was married to a man who tried to decide everything for her. She left and built a much better life. When I saw you sitting there silent, I saw the same pain. Something inside me softened. For the first time since the argument with Ethan, I felt truly seen. I want to help you, he continued. If you still want a condo, I can lower the price a bit. I can wait while you sort out your situation. I'm not in a hurry to sell. It took me a moment to find my voice. Why would you do that for me? Because everyone deserves a fair chance to start over. And no woman should feel small in her own home. His words struck something deep inside me. Hope. A small, trembling hope that maybe my life didn't have to stay the way it was. I told him I needed time. He said to take all I needed. For the first time in a long while, someone believed I could stand on my own. The days that followed were a blur, as if I were walking through a hallway filled with doors I had never noticed before. Some led to fear, some to uncertainty, but one door opened to something I hadn't felt in years. Possibility. Ethan returned after 3 days, quiet and withdrawn. He slept on the sofa, left early, came home late. We barely spoke. There was a time when this coldness would have crushed me. Now, it only confirmed what I already knew. We were done pretending. While he drifted through the apartment like a shadow, I sat at the kitchen table each night, studying something new: divorce laws, property rights, mortgages, financial independence. For the first time, I planned a future that didn't revolve around his approval. I learned I could legally claim half of our condo. With my steady work history, a bank might approve a mortgage. The thought was terrifying and thrilling. I had never made a major life decision without Ethan. But every article I read, every calculator I filled out, every forum post from women who had rebuilt their lives gave me strength. Then, as if testing my resolve, I found a job posting. An international company needed an accounting specialist to work with their European branches. German required. My heart leapt. I applied before I could talk myself out of it. The interview came quickly. I sat across from the hiring manager, speaking confidently in the language I had once whispered in secret. When she smiled and said, "Impressed. We need people like you here," something inside me rose. A week later, I got the job, higher pay, better benefits, a real future. For the first time in years, I felt I had opened a door that truly belonged to me. When the divorce paperwork finally moved forward, the weight on my shoulders began to lift. Ethan and I agreed to split the condo, and he offered to buy out my share. It was practical, and for once, we didn't argue. When the transfer went through, I held the check in my hands, feeling something unfamiliar settle inside me. Security, independence, the start of standing on my own. With my new job underway, my days became fuller, brighter, and steadier. I handled financial reports for international branches, emailed colleagues overseas, and joined online meetings where my German no longer had to be hidden. Each accomplishment felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been buried under years of self-doubt. Hans kept his promise. He waited patiently while I finalized the divorce and gathered all my documents. When the bank approved my mortgage, I signed the papers with hands that trembled, not from fear, but from pride. The keys to his condo, the condo that would become my home, rested in my palm like a symbol of a life I had built with my own strength. Around that time, I enrolled in an evening certification course to advance my skills. On the third class, a tall man with steady eyes and an easy smile sat beside me. "Is this seat taken?" he asked. "No, go ahead," I said. His name was Julian Brooks. Divorced, starting over, learning new things. When he spoke, he listened as much as he talked, something I wasn't used to. After class, we shared notes and walked to the parking lot together. It became a routine. Soon, we met early to study and stayed late talking about work, life, and second chances. Julian never pushed or rushed. His presence was gentle, patient, and respectful. Being around him felt like taking a deep breath after years of holding it in. I wasn't looking for someone new. But life has a way of reminding you that kindness exists, that respect is possible, and that love does not have to hurt. A full year passed before I realized how far I had come from the woman I once was. One evening, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my condo, watching the city lights reflect off the river. The rooms around me were quiet, warm, and unmistakably mine. Every chair, every picture frame, every detail had been chosen by my own hands. Julian knocked a few minutes later. When I let him in, he greeted me with the same gentle smile that had become so familiar. We sat on the balcony with 2 glasses of wine, the sunset painting the sky in soft gold. He reached for my hand, not to control but to connect. A simple gesture, steady and genuine. "I'm glad our paths crossed," he said. "Me too," I answered. And this time, my voice did not tremble. After he left that night, I walked through my home slowly, letting the quiet sink in. For so long, I had lived small. I had let myself be talked over, dismissed, managed. I had convinced myself that silence was safer than speaking up. But the truth was simple. Silence does not protect you. It only teaches others that your voice does not matter. The moment I chose myself, everything changed. I found a job that valued my mind, a home that reflected my choices, a circle of people who respected me, a future built on my decisions, not someone else's. And most importantly, I found the version of myself I thought I had lost forever. If any part of my story feels familiar, I want you to remember this. You are not stuck. You are not powerless. And you are never too old or too late to start again. Sometimes, the life you deserve is waiting just outside the door you're afraid to open. Thank you for spending this time with me. If my story touched you, let me know by liking this video, sharing it, or leaving a comment about where you're watching from. I would love to hear your story too. New chapters begin every day. You just have to choose yours.